In stepping up its preventive mandate and stopping the escalation of corruption in the public service, the ICPC in 2003 initiated the Anti-Corruption and Transparency Units to serve as its outposts in federal ministries, departments, and agencies. Driving its powers from Section 7, Subsection 1, and Section 70 of the Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Act 2000. The units are to perform all the functions of ICPC detailed in Section 6A to F of the Act, except that of prosecution of offenders. The question to be asked then is, how well are the Anti-Corruption and Transparency Units, popularly called ACTUs, achieving the purpose for which they were established? In what ways has the Commission achieved the objectives of curbing corrupt practices through the ACTUs? These and many more would be answered in this edition. Welcome to Corruption Must Go, ICPC's weekly television program. I am your host, Murna Barnabas Atiai. But first, Ruth Awadi is standing by with updates on happenings around the world of the Commission. It's over to you, Ruth.
Thank you, Murna. Welcome to this segment on anti-corruption stories. I am Ruth Awodi. The chairman of ICPC, Professor Bolaji Owasonye, SAN, has said that the commission was not at liberty to disclose information related to the identity of a petitioner and suspects or the status of any investigative activities until investigation was completed. Professor Owasonye made this known during an advocacy visit to the Commission's headquarters by the Service Compact with All Nigerians Servicom office, led by its National Coordinator and Chief Executive Officer, Mrs. Nnenna Akajimeli. The chairman revealed that when cases are received, they are investigated to ascertain which ones are to be handled by the Commission, as not all reported cases fall under the purview of ICPC.
The act is very clear. We're not obliged to reply. So the act is the standard. The only way you can get us to reply, you have to go to court.
Speaking at the meeting, the Servicom National Coordinator, Mrs. Nnenna Akajimeli, praised the Commission for the creation of the Servicom unit and said she was happy at the progress the unit has made so far. The coordinator stated the advocacy visit was to improve the Commission's public service delivery by building the capacity of the management through training and to demonstrate how services can be improved in practice.
We raise and praise, most importantly, of the name and shame. And so for every evaluation we go to, we identify their areas of strength. The starting and entry point is actually the standard and the service charter. And so with the service charter, we now measure compliance. Are you complying? Are you keeping to the promises? And remember, this was what the service standard was derived based on the resources, human and all the material resources available to you, and the priorities of the stakeholders who use the service.
The highlight of the visit was the naming of ICPC chairman as a Servicom ambassador. In another development, anti-corruption experts in Nigeria have called for a collective and multifaceted approach to the fight against corruption in Nigeria, while advocating the reinforcement of both anti-corruption laws and preventive mechanisms to curb corruption. This call came during a conference organized by Chatham House in Abuja recently tagged Towards Collective Action on Corruption in Nigeria, Linking Evidence and Practice in Support of Change, which was aimed at understanding how corruption becomes sustained as a collective practice, as well as the social drivers that determine what actions are acceptable to or disapproved by citizens, with a view to examining the effectiveness of anti-corruption interventions and charting a way forward. Speaking during one of the panel discussions, the spokesperson of ICPC, Mrs. Azuka Ogugwa, noted that the Commission's approach to tackling systemic corruption in the education sector include the development of the National Values Curriculum, system study and review, corruption risk assessment of different levels of the education sector, tracking education-focused constituency projects, introduction of clubs and activities for students, amongst others.
We also looked at the universities. We conducted the university system study and review, looking at federal universities, state universities, and private universities as a pilot study, because in Nigeria we have all these types of universities. Again, we saw a lot. Out of that, I can tell you now that led us to, that was what prompted our work in sexual harassment. Before then, ICPC was not working on sexual harassment, but later, after the study, we now found this issue of sextortion was very rampant in schools, and sexual harassment in schools is a form of abuse of office.
Also, the provost of the Anti-Corruption Academy of Nigeria, ACAN, the training arm of ICPC, Professor Olatunde Babawale, reiterated the need to adopt a multidisciplinary approach to overcome corruption, as corruption is a multidimensional problem.
There are too many factors that explain the problem of corruption. We have just talked about it. There are social factors. There are psychological factors. When you get into public office, for example, as I said before, there are social expectations from your community. They expect you to dress differently. They expect you to donate more at community functions or lunches. They expect you to drive a different car. They expect you to build a new house. These are things that put pressure, as Madam Dubara said, on us. And until we begin to conscientize our people through all these various approaches we have talked about, that these are things that put pressure on public officials.
Other speakers at the conference include the Catholic Bishop of Sokoto Diocese, Matthew Hassan Kuka, who kicked against the placement of much expectations on religion to disabuse the minds of corrupt individuals from corruption.
So a lot of this thing about corruption is about a culture of human rights, human dignity. It's a multidisciplinary subject in which everybody needs to be doing a little bit. Whether it's about children having the capacity and ability to ask the right questions.
The program, which was supported by MacArthur Foundation, featured the launch of a report on citizens' participation in elections and vote selling behaviors in Nigeria, authored by Dr. Lina Koni Hoffman, Associate Fellow, Chatham House Africa Program, and Dr. Raj Navanit Patel, Postdoctoral Fellow, Department of Philosophy, Politics and Economics, University of Pennsylvania. That will be all on this segment. Corruption Must Go continues with Muna. Stay with us.
If you're just tuning in, this is Corruption Must Go. And the focus of today's edition is the role of Anti-Corruption and Transparency Units, ACTUs, in the fight against corrupt practices and other related offenses. Since inception, ICPC has inaugurated about 600 Anti-Corruption and Transparency Units as its outposts in the government ministries, departments, and agencies. The units are mandated to fight lack of integrity in the service and address the potential high risks posed by the overall problem of corrupt practices in the MDAs. Mr. Olayinka Ayegbayo, Deputy Director, System Study and Review of ICPC, speaks to us about the mandate of actors.
Regular sensitization of the staff of the MDAs on and against corruption, budget implementation monitoring, that is the annual budget cycle that government brings out for its expenditure and for its programs for the citizenry. So these MDAs carry out the aspects that relate to their various mandates. And so Act 2 is there to monitor and see that the various ministries, departments, and agencies are up and doing in terms of budget implementation. And then there is a system study and review. These are done basically to ensure that aspects of the MDAs, of their functions and their responsibilities that can bring about loopholes or vulnerability to corruption are eliminated, or they are minimized, they are diminished. And in addition, they ensure that their agencies, that's the MDAs, are ready for the annual deployment of the ethics and integrity compliance scorecard that we do in MDAs to assess the ethical and integrity compliance standards and compliance to even regulatory and even establishment acts of those MDAs. We do that annually in order to ensure that they are keeping to clearly stated guidelines, rules and regulations, extant guidelines, rules and regulations. So basically these are the things that the actors do in the MDAs. Act 2, since over 20 years of existence in the MDAs, have driven a lot of anti-corruption programs and activities that has had very evident impact in the performance of our ministries, departments and agencies. For instance, with the presence of actors in the MDAs, there has been increased reportage of corruption or corruption-related cases. It has also created increased awareness among staff and even the management about the need to shun corruption and to maintain transparency and accountability in the performance of responsibilities in the MDAs. It has also led to increased consciousness by heads of MDAs, all the heads, ministers, permanent secretaries, chief executive officers, of the need to be accountable and transparent, because the actors have driven constant sensitization activities, that has led to such commendable changes noticed in our MDAs.
We also spoke to some ACTU desk officers, and these are their various experiences.
First and foremost, is set up in agencies, as ministries, departments, and agencies of government. They are set up as an in-house check mechanisms, and they are not out to withhold management. So, looking at that from that approach as a desk officer, I ensure that we have monthly meetings and also sensitizing them on the importance of carrying their duties effectively. Then, With that, they were able to conduct system study. I'm also the desk officer at the National Health Insurance Scheme, which is now National Health Insurance Authority. With the system study they conducted, the focus was the operational systems, both headquarters and states. And the recommendations they proffered was what the management were able to implement from the report that is submitted. And it has been very, very great. It has also encouraged them to put in more effort to ensure that there is more achievements in the scheme. The second ministry I'm overseeing is Federal Ministry of Environment. I'm also the desk officer of the Federal Ministry of Environment, and we all know that under the public service, the ministries adhere to public service rules, but I was able to encourage them to domesticate the code of ethics. And they are able to do that. The management also gave their support, and they have a domesticated code of ethics in place, which the staff of the ministries are also imbibing and using it to help them on what they're expected to do. Well, based on my own success stories from the conduct of the system study they've been able to do, it has also helped them to be able to look out for areas where there are loopholes that bring about opportunities for corruption, so sensitizing them, having capacity workshops, advocacy visits. It has also helped the effectiveness of the actors generally.
Generally, you see, this effectiveness is measured by the responses of the actors and their ability to checkmate and look at those areas which they should assist management in ensuring that they perform optimally and through their acts and at the same time their gazetted laws. The actors in MDAs are necessary because most chief executives may not necessarily know those areas which they might be found wanting, but the actors, being an arm of the ICPC, has provided in their duties, in the duties of Section 6P to F of the ICPC Act 2000 to ensure preventions and at the same time look at those loopholes which may guide the chief executives in ensuring that they do what is expected of them. Ethics and integrity scorecards. We have the Actual Effectiveness Index. We have the system studies and review tools, amongst other tools that are being applied by the ICPC to ensure the effectiveness of actors in MDAs.
Before I was posted there as a desk officer, the actor was a bit redundant, but when I got in there, I tried to change things, shake things up, of course in line with the provisions of the standing order. And one of the things the standing order says is that actors should conduct what we call the Integrity Assessment Forum yearly. It's a forum where the actors conduct some kind of award system, if you may, at the end of the year, so that they can award staff who have performed well integrity-wise. So we did that last year at the Federal Judicial Service Commission. Some staff were awarded, and that serves as a way of encouraging other staffs in the year that is coming. So what we've done in MDAs past is that when that happens, we discover that by accident or by design, those MDAs perform better the next year. The staff are willing to do better and put in their quota in what they do. It also happened with the PEF. I used to be in the desk officer with PEF, defunct PEF. And there, for the first time, PEF conducted what we call the corruption risk assessment. It's not something that actors do generally because they're scared of doing that, but PEF took it on under my watch, under my advice. We did what we call the corruption risk assessment. We went to a number of stations of the board, and then we did that assessment, and it made everybody realize that, actors is doing a really good job. ICPC is doing something great through the actors. And it also helps people sit up in organizations. So that's what I would say briefly, example of success stories that we've had in the course of the work. So what the actor does is that because it's made up of staff who are local within the organization, they understand the workings of the organization better than ICPC. They make day-to-day decisions on those organizations, and they understand those corruption vulnerabilities, which we may not, as ICPC, be able to see, or will take a longer time to see. So in that sense, we find that the actors are more effective because they tend to report these things to us and we act faster. You also know that when we deal with corruption, it has to do with time frame. So if the time within when the act has been done and when you discover is wide, it means that you've probably lost government funds because those funds have gone in the wind. But with the act, we're able to do these things, you know, per second, per minute, we identify those loopholes and we work fast. So that's generally what the ACTU does for us, and that's why the ACTUs are generally effective. We've had cases where ACTUs have reported corruption incidences to us, and we're able to intercept vehicles that directors took to their houses, intercept funds, and things like that. So that's why the ACTU is effective in this regard. Now, the ACTU, we have a tool which is called the ACTU Effectiveness Index. That is what the ICPC uses to measure the effectiveness of ACTUs. Now, that tool is in form of a set of questionnaires that speak to the work that the ACTU is supposed to do now. Everything the ACTU should do is detailed in what we call the standing order for the operations of ACTUs. And that document, if you may, is like the operating manual of the ACTUs. So they have to do everything that is detailed in that book. Now, the Effectiveness Index asks questions to answer the duties outlined in the standing order, right? So that we find out the ACTUs are performing at par. So what happens is that at the end of the year, this tool is deployed every year. That's the Effectiveness Index now to all ACTUs to measure how well they have operated. So if this, and we have what we call a ranking system. So if we have an ACTU ranks as highly effective, then we know that that ACTU is performing very effective. And then we also see by the things they churn out, by their reports, by their activities, by the way the organization looks generally. Sometimes you walk into an organization and just by walking into it, you know that the ACTU is working there. We know because we work with the ACTUs directly and we know the impact they play in organizations.
The Anti-Corruption and Transparency Unit signify the inclusion of all in the fight against corruption and the promotion of integrity, accountability, and proper management of public affairs, working with the management and officers of MDAs and with all other stakeholders. Corruption will be minimized in the public sector. That will be all for this edition. Join ICPC in the war against corruption in Nigeria. Visit our website www.icpc.gov.ng or call our toll-free lines as shown on the screen to make your reports, inquiries, and suggestions. Follow us on Twitter at ICPC_PE. You can also watch the program on our YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/ICPC Nigeria. See you again next week. Bye for now.
Bye for now.